Hi everybody, I'm Connie McVay, and I just want to welcome you all out to Joe's book release and signing. So it's a pleasure to see you all, and it's been a really great pleasure to work with him on this book. And yeah, so I just wanted to welcome you all out, and we're going to get started. So also I wanted to let you know the books will be on sale. They're $10 a piece, and after he's done speaking, he'll be doing the signing of those. So make sure you get it because it's a legendary autograph. Legendary. So, all right. So first, I just wanted to just thank him for giving me the opportunity to do some of the editing for this book. I love it. I love editing. So I'm kind of that weird person. So, but it's been a really great pleasure, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. So I just wanted to read something out of here. It's on page 1. It's a cute book. It says, everyone has a moment when negative thoughts or ideas can enter your mind, but those moments should remain just that, moments. Our world is saturated with hatred and negativity. And so I'm going to pause right there because when you're around Joe, like, your world is not saturated with negativity. I mean, he just literally brings out positivity in everything that he writes and every person that he's around. And so I would just really encourage you definitely to get a copy of this book because, like, oh my gosh, it really, like, I think everyone needs to hear it. I think everyone needs to hear what it has to say because I don't know about you, and you don't have to raise your hands, but I know me and I know a lot of other people that I know have been hurt by someone in the church, by the church itself, by a pastor at church, by a friend at church, by a so-called Christian who maybe you thought was a Christian, but they were just, you know, living a lie, or they've been hurt themselves. So I think that this is a really great opportunity for you to get the book to read, maybe either to deal with something that you have had to deal with in your own life, or if you meet someone that comes into our church, or wherever church you're a part of, or into your life, you know how to better, like, deal with them because they have probably been hurt by someone in their church, and that's probably why they're not in church at the moment, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's a really great opportunity for you to be able to just reach out to the person on a whole nother level, because it gives a really good insight on what someone might be thinking, feeling, why they left, and why they're probably coming back. You know, because God is a God of second chances, and I think that this book really, if you get it in the right hands of people, it will definitely be their second chance, and they can see that, you know, God is a God of love. He is a God of second chances. He is a God of the comeback. And I know Jason had a friend that, like, came back to church a couple weeks ago, and I just thought, like, when I was reading this, I was like, oh, he really should probably get a hold of this book because I don't know if he had been in church before or if this was just his first opportunity in church. But I think that I think it's really a good piece for everyone to have. I don't know, there's just so much in here. It's just really full. And I know for me personally, I was hurt by the church. I was hurt by pastors in church. I was hurt by friends in church. My mom still won't step foot in a church because of the people that hurt her in church. So I'm going to be sending a copy of this home to her because I think that people are just people, and we've all been hurt. And that's why hurting people hurt other people. And I think that this book just kind of helps open the eyes to people that are hurting, and then also to you to be able to reach out to those hurting people. So whether you've been hurt or you haven't, I really think that that this would be a really good opportunity for everyone to just be able to reach out and be that missionary that I know our pastor talks about, because, you know, we are in a mission field. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Hysaan. So everyone please welcome legendary Hysaan Goode.
As he cheer for himself.
All right, I've got 5 minutes, so
I'm sure you do.
I'm going to be serious. Please refrain from the jokes, Mr. Taylor. So first of all, I just want to thank my brother in the Lord for the opportunity to be a part of this. I really consider it an honor. You know, that first of all, you would have me speak about the book. I just want to talk. I'm going to share a little bit about the book, but I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Woodley himself, and just how I've seen the transformation into this, you know, this awesome man of God, and the man who's sitting here today. So we've been at this church for about 3 years. By the way, I'm Hysaan Goode. You can call me H. I'm the president of Good Solutions Staffing, Training, and Recruiting Company here in Columbus, Ohio. And we've been in business for about 4 years. That's the plug. You said I could do a plug. I want to get that out of the way. We've been here for about 3.5 years. My wife and 3 beautiful children over there. And, you know, Joe and I, you know, when we would see each other, we'd talk a little bit in the hallway. He would, you know, reference sometimes how I was dressed, and we would just start talking about where he's from and things of that nature. So, you know, when you're just passing by, you know, people in church, you know, you say hello, you know, you may say a few, you know, how you doing, those kinds of things, but you're not really getting to know who that person is. And my first perception of Joe, and I think I've shared this with him, is I thought he was a little soft-spoken, wasn't fully, how should I say, wasn't really the man that I see today. Just kind of, he was here, good guy, but just kind of soft-spoken. Well, as many of you know, we started, and some of you might need to, somebody might need to let me know when my 5 minutes is up. But anyway, we started talking a little bit more, and we developed a relationship through the men's prayer group, which started in January or February of this year. And actually, we had a conversation one time out in the downstairs in the hallway, and I found out a little bit about Joe's background, his church background. And when he was telling me about some of the things he had been through, I'm like, we had some of the same battle scars. And I was actually laughing. He had me in tears almost, talking about some of the things he had experienced in a very unhealthy organization that he was a part of, an unhealthy church, unhealthy ministry. And just to hear him explain, I don't know if you remember that, but it was, I think, you, myself, Warren, and I'm like in tears because the way he carried himself, many times when people have been hurt in church, they kind of carry a chip on their shoulder, unless they've been healed. And to hear some of the things that he had gone through and some of the manipulation and just a very unhealthy environment gave me a lot more respect for him because he's still serving God. And so I've been a part of some unhealthy ministries as well. And so, and sometimes you carry that with you, and it can kind of keep you from really experiencing who God is because of some of that hurt that you're carrying. Hey guys, I need you to be quiet. Thank you. So we had that conversation, and so we ended up coming into this prayer group. And whenever you begin to pray with other people and you go to your Father, intimacy is developed because you're kind of pulling back the layers and you're going to God. And so through that time with, thank you, Micah, through that time as we have been in this prayer group, I've gotten to know this man, and I have seen a radical transformation. He had blessed me with a few of his other books before, and I don't know if you know this, but it just, when you first gave me a couple of the other books, I'm like, what? You never know people's story, and you never know what's in them or, who they are until you actually get a chance to sit down and talk with them and hear about some of their experiences. So to see this big, I'm going to use a little slang, diesel, which for some of you means big, this big dude who's this awesome writer and has, published several books, was really a surprise to me because, I'm thinking he's just a jock. But to fast forward and to bring my time to a close, and then I'm going to share a little bit about the book. This man is very gifted. I've seen a transformation of a guy who was somewhat soft-spoken to his coming into his own, being the man, the father, the man of God that God has called him to be, man of integrity. I appreciate listening to some of the stories of his background in New York and listening to there's been a lot deposited into this man. from his mother to grandmother and other people in his family. And so the book, Return Home, Wounded Warrior. I started reading it not thinking that I was gonna be asked to speak. I just said, you know what, let me read this book, because I had started a couple of these others and didn't get all the way through them. But this one, when I began to read it, I feel like this book has an anointing on it. For the men in the room, I love books that are short chapters, to the point, and not a lot of fluff. And so for the fellas who just don't give me a lot, it's a great book from that standpoint. The chapters are short, gives you a lot of substance. Is my 5 minutes up? Oh, okay. So I can preach. No. All right, so I'm on third base coming home. So there's so many things in here. I wrote a few notes. The book is very practical. A lot of good scriptural references. I already mentioned the short chapters, which I felt were really on point, so that really kind of kept my interest. I appreciate the transparency. He really opens up in this book. He talks about his past. He talks about some of the wounds. And one of the areas that Joe and I have really connected on is some of the guys have not been raised with their biological fathers. So sometimes when you meet other men who have had that experience, there's an instant connection because we can identify with some of the issues that you deal with, right? So he has a chapter, and I'm going to just mention it real quick. He talks a little bit about that in church or just in life, most people would find their healing if they would sit down with their brother or sister who has offended them, and that's a scriptural principle. If somebody offends you, go to them. Discuss the event and be healed. He talks about how he carried anger towards his father for many years, and I could identify with that because I was once there as well. The hurt he carried around not only was damaging him because of the choices he was making, but it was also hurting other people. And hurting people who didn't really have anything to do with the situation. So he said when he made the choice to sit down with his father, talk and let go of the hurt and the pain that had haunted him for a majority of his life, everything changed. That principle goes not just with, family members, but people in the church. People in the church sometimes offend you. It could be a pastor, it could be a leader. Sometimes we have expectations of people in the church because they call themselves Christian. But you know what? What I've learned is that we all do have frailties. It's not an excuse to be hurtful to people, but when someone has kind of rubbed you the wrong way, it's healthy to go to them and talk to them. And so I appreciate the last point, is he said there were people that began to speak to him about what he had to do as far as his actions to take responsibility. And people, if that's something that I've been seeing in the church nowadays, is we are so kind of tentative and somewhat we're not as bold as we need to be when it comes to talking to people about behavior that's hindering them from reaching their full potential in Christ. And so he had people that talked to him about his attitude and his behavior. And once he began to take responsibility for his actions and his part, things began to change. So I really enjoyed that chapter. There's so many things in here that I enjoyed. He talks about, it has one chapter talking about evangelism and discipleship, worship versus idolatry, our identity crisis, preaching and teaching. And really what's good about at the end of each chapter, I believe most of the chapters, he had like 6 or 7 points to really just kind of outline what was discussed in that chapter. So I really recommend it. I'm glad I read it. I'm looking forward to other books. I appreciate the transparency. There's an anointing on this book. Like I said, I will have you sign mine, and I'm going to get a few and sow them into people's lives. So thank you for the opportunity. Joe is an awesome man of God. I am just honored to know him. And when you reach your kingdom, remember me. All right? Because I know there's the best is yet to come. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Tim Hileman. Give it up.
Well, as he said, I'm Tim Hileman. About a year ago, I got the privilege of meeting Joe. And the beginning of his book is not Joe, as you know him now. When I first started reading his book, I was like, wow, this is crazy, because I know Joe as a true worshiper, as a true prayer warrior, not somebody that ever had to be there every night of the week and who had to have someone tell him to get up and worship. What I appreciate about Joe, and this is just going to be all about Joe tonight, because he's going to talk about his book. I don't need to highlight it. So I just want you to see his character, is what I want to say. Because the book itself, it'll sell itself. I plan on handing out several copies of it. I truly believe it's a book for right now. Perfect timing for it. Amen. It's strong. And just like H said, the chapters are short, so that helps out guys, especially me. If it's dragging on, I'll fall asleep. Right. My attention span's about like that. Several other things I really appreciate about Joe and H too. These guys are really teaching me how to dress now, sharpening me back up. Joe said about 6 months ago, he come in, he was wearing a real nice sports jacket, and he was talking about, right after just before he had that speaking engagement down in Dayton, or Wilberforce, yeah. And he was talking about how God was telling him, hey, it's time to step up, clean his act up a little bit. So as you watch him and you observe Joe, the way he carries himself, he's not clumsy. He's very precise. And when he speaks, he doesn't have to demand you to pay attention to him. He commands it. His presence is very commanding. Not just his physical stature. I mean, when you look at the man, it's like, time out. It's my bodyguard. I'm not going to make him mad, But when you look inside of him and you get to see his spirit, and see how big his spirit is, his physical size is absolutely nothing compared to his spirit. Yes. I've had the pleasure and the privilege of watching him worship up here in the sanctuary and in my house during our Bible study. And I'm telling you what, he has opened up myself to learn how to worship. Because coming from the background I came from as far as church, you'd stand up and you'd pick up the hymnal and turn to page 68 and listen to some older lady playing a piano and some even older lady trying to sing. So that wasn't worship. So I didn't know how to worship. I really didn't. But when you get to watch Joe, and especially when you're that size, and you start to worship, people do. They look at you. They take notice. So now I have a freer spirit about myself when it comes time to worship. I can actually feel better about it now, because now I have a better understanding of it. Yes. Just because of his example and H's. You guys really, you truly worship. It's not fake. It's not made up. It's not put on. You can see it comes from your heart. In the same way with praying. 2 weeks ago on Sunday morning, we had Sunday morning prayer group. I got to see that man just really get into praying. It was a weekend of Kenneth Copeland, and I mean the Spirit was just up here tangibly. Yes. It was just, you could really feel the Spirit. And then Joe, when he started praying, it was, man, if you weren't broken at that point, you need to stick around for prayer, because he gets into it, and it's strong prayer, and you can tell that he's truly listening to what God has to say.
Yes.
So it's a matter of the way that he is growing. And when you take a good look at him, and just over the past year that I've known him, boldness now,
Yes.
I mean, he is more bold than he was before.
Yes.
And he'll pray for you and worship like nobody's business. We had the privilege of praying for him before he went to New York for his aunt, right?
Yes.
When she passed. And just to see Joe's heart, even in that time of crisis, he still had joy.
Amen.
You know, he didn't allow that to tear him down. I know a lot of people would have been all upset, and granted, there was grief there. There was grief, but he wasn't displaying it in a point of agony. You know, he was ready to go and pray with his family, see his family be reunited out of this.
Yes.
So when you see something like that, you see a man who's willing to help others grow.
Yes.
And take some of that impact off of them and draw family back together. That's the kind of guy you want to hang out with.
Yes.
And then on top of that, I found out he's already had several other books out.
Yes.
Which I never did get any, so just saying.
Bring Sunday.
But I was honored when Joe came to my house and autographed my book and handed it to me. That was an honor to me. That really spoke loudly to me. So when I started reading it, I was like, this is powerful. And it's the best way, because it is, the chapters they're short.
Yeah.
But they're points, and they're really good points, and they're strong points. So when you start reading it, you have to examine your own life.
That's right.
You know? Because I got kicked out of church when I first started going to church, so, you know, I know about being hurt in church and having too many expectations on you and stuff.